The All Elite Podcast. Covering all the latest news and results from the AEW.
Wait a minute. Sean Spears? Spears with a chair shot right to the side of the head of Cody.
This is pro wrestling analysis as you've never heard before.
Deathly Hallows!
Might be it.
1, 2, 3, Kasabian!
Coming to you every single week. So without any further delay, let's go all in and get the show started right now.
Hello and welcome everybody to AEW Dynamite AFTERSHOCK. I'm your host Zach Perez at Spots High on Twitter. And it's crazy to think, but we're already 4 weeks into AEW television, AEW Dynamite on TNT, and so far so good for AEW. I mean, they've basically taken over the ratings against NXT, their supposed counter-programming done by WWE. They've consistently beat them out every week running now, and they've run numbers that are much higher, and they're catching the key demographic, the 18 to 49 demographic. So very impressive start for a young company, and I can't wait to see what more they have in store. But for now, this evening's edition of AEW Dynamite was action-packed from top to bottom. I remember a good point from Simon Miller of What Culture, who was speaking on the fact that basically due to AEW's schedule, they can sort of go all out in a, no pun intended, in a sort of different way than WWE competitors can, because their schedule is a little lighter. If they want to, they can basically only work the one television show per week and have that be the only thing on their schedule. So it lightens the load, it makes things easier, and it allows for this sort of balls to the wall sort of action-packed contest that we get in AEW, and definite showing of also how talented the wrestlers are that are involved with this as well. But really it just is a top to bottom thing with AEW. It's their style, and it's really a smart way of the way they've placed their scheduling and made it easier so that they can allow for that kind of all out style. So very interesting to see if they'll be able to maintain that as the company grows over time. But for now, we are treated to an innovative brand of wrestling that's really starting a revolution, and you can already sort of see the way that they've changed the fan base and changed the perception of what a good match looks like, especially for a television show. So shout out to the quality of programming we've gotten so far in the month or so that AEW television has been around. I think it's definitely given the alternative that it promised to give. So, definitely great things going on over in NXT, great things going on over in Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. Not taking anything away from that, but I definitely think that the superior overall wrestling program has been for the 4 weeks now, AEW Dynamite. So it's coming forward as my favorite program. I definitely understand people have differing opinions on that, but just it's so consistent to me. I never get bored watching it. There's never any tune-out moments like I have with like the Bobby Lashley Lana storylines or things like that. So I think that it's very much a wrestling first product, and that very much speaks to the type of wrestling fan that I am. So we had a very fitting start to that right off the bat with Private Party versus the Lucha Brothers, and this was a really intense, fast-paced matchup. It kind of reminded me a little bit of WCW and their cruiserweight or luchador experiments that they had going on. Some of the better moments like Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis at Bash in the Beach. I think it was 1996. That was a really, really good contest, and it kind of was similar to the way that they were just going fast-paced, doing some innovative things, springboards, things you really hadn't seen before in similar ways to the way that the things you hadn't seen when Ray and Psychosis were doing that in WCW, or like Super Crazy and Tajiri and ECW, the way they're just constant motion, going at each other, doing innovative offense on a constant basis. It really kind of blows your mind and brings back some of the memories of what makes you fall in love with wrestling, and that just can be said for a lot of AEW's product all around, but particularly in their tag division. And once again, the tag team wrestling was the star of the show, and they're showcasing it really, really well. And a big part of that has been Private Party, their great push over the Young Bucks to start this tournament. And this matchup here, you had so many crazy, innovative maneuvers, some great tag team action, a springboard crucifix bomb by, I think it was Isaiah Cassidy, and then multiple springboard Hurricane Ranas all over the place. That's that's what is akin to the Rey Mysterio Psychosis and Super Crazy Tajiri matchups. Just constant Hurricane Ranas from, it seemed like, everywhere possible on the mat and more, out to the outside as well. So you just had some crazy different maneuvers by Rey Fenix, a brutal stomp off the top rope right onto the back, and it just cracked downward. It looked vicious. That was a really, really brutal looking spot. You had a perfect 450 splash and shooting star press by Mark Quinn. Those were both really on point. He is really just kind of floats in the air in a really, really majestic sort of way. Breakneck speed. Pace was brilliant. So much innovative offense, and just a consistent theme with the tag team division where it seems like they're all trying to outdo each other every time they go out there. Pay-per-view quality matches on a television show. It's almost like you don't think that they can maintain it, but with the talent that they have in AEW and the type of wrestlers and the philosophy they've put out so far, I think that it's definitely something they will maintain and have going forward. It's just something that won't die because it can't die, because it's part of the AEW brand, and going completely insane every time you get a chance to be on television is just going to be a regular thing, I believe, going forward, and that's what sets it apart. So great job here of executing that very philosophy and showing out Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn, even though they did ultimately take the loss to the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon and Rey Fenix. I think that they looked very good in doing so, and that's also something that AEW has done very well also, is just putting people over in losses and making people look good, even when they do have to take a loss to somebody else. But moving on after that, we did have a little build for Wardlow, who had been built up at the last pay-per-view, I believe it was. So a little introduction to him for the television market, just getting his hype set up. Good thing, I think, because they do need some more big guys in AEW. The name's a little odd, but I guess it's a little similar to like Walter in NXT UK. It'll take some getting used to, but if he's dominant enough, it'll just kind of stick and work. One-off, one-name taglines have always worked for big men. Undertaker, Kane, just simple off names like that. So eventually maybe Wardlow will be something that you can get accustomed to, but for now it does hit the ear a little off for now. So it'll take some getting used to, but like I said, so did Walter in NXT UK, but it did work out. Interestingly enough, Chris Jericho did say how he thought Walter's name was stupid, so it kind of does come full circle, or inner circle, I guess, with AEW. But moving on here, we did next up have another tag team contest, another one in the tag team tournament, just as the previous matchup was as well, with SCU taking on the Dark Order. Christopher Daniels is still out with what I'm assuming is a kayfabe injury from that pile driver from Pentagon onto the ramp. So Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian are still continuing on. I don't know if it was explicitly stated that it had to still be the same two going forward into the next round, or not even if he wasn't injured. But anyway, they do use the reasoning of having him out injured, and a nice little background video with Dark Order, showing them, since they haven't debuted on television as of yet. And I think it's worth shouting out just right away with this matchup too, that they're announcing the 20-minute time limits and basically fitting these TV matches into a specific time slot and allowing the time limits to be a part of the storytelling, which is a theme so far. The Cody versus Darby Allin match, it's just been something that has told a good story and has been a part of wrestling for a long time, the time limit and the draw, and kind of the idea of basically just beating the hell out of each other until there's no time left in the match, and not having a victor, and letting it move on and drag out to a later date. So that'll come back again later on in the night. But right here, just announcing that and having that be a part of this tag team tournament match, it kind of does sell the intensity and the fact that they do need to wrap it up, and the 3 counts, or the close 2 counts rather, do feel a little more important when you have the importance of the time limits behind it as well. It's not just, they can't fight forever, even though the chance might ask for it. And we did see continue with JR being high on Scorpio Sky, continuing his praise of him, just going through and basically praising his name up and down, saying he's one of the most athletic people he's seen. And it's not something really worth arguing. It's just interesting, the fact that he's latched on to Scorpio Sky and really does have a sort of connection towards him. Don't know if they have some sort of history or what it is, but he definitely seems very high on Scorpio Sky. But Evil Uno and Stu Grayson also are kind of growing on me a bit more. At first, I didn't really think they were much of a standout, but that might be just something they suffer from with the diversity and depth of talent in AEW's tag division in general. And they might also have kind of a similar problem to like the Viking Raiders, where it's good team but wrong gimmick, or maybe outdated gimmick, or even with the Viking Raiders, I'd venture to say bad gimmick all around. I don't think that this is necessarily a bad gimmick, the Dark Order, with Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, but I think it needs a little tweaking and might need some adjusting to make it kind of actually fit to the level of talent that they have in the ring, which they showed off very well here. But a big pop did come from the Inner Circle walking through the crowd and going up to a sort of little VIP box, which will come up again later on in the night as well. But it just kind of shows and speaks to the fact that they're already instantly over. The involvement with Chris Jericho has really sold. LAX are Proud and Powerful now, as they're known. And getting Sammy Guevara involved in that as well. It's just pushing them all very well and kind of getting them embraced, or rather hated, as a heel faction. So already working well for the purpose that it's trying to serve, and getting everybody a little shoved to the top of the card here in AEW in its sort of infancy stage of television, as they grow the product out and get it to new eyes. But back inside of the ring, it's worth noting that Frankie Kazarian looked great during this contest. A nice springboard leg drop that had some really nice elevation. Sort of double pin Northern Light suplex spot that was great. Tossing his own body up and down with the springboards and looking very good and looking as crisp as ever. Speaks to the fact that he's been in the industry for so long, and he's been very undervalued in a lot of other promotions, but he continues to show out and continues to show that he's one of the more consistent performers in the industry currently and in the past as well. But as I mentioned before, there was a lot of interesting offense from the Dark Order in this. You had a tossing sit-out powerbomb spot that was kind of very akin to the Viking Experience finisher by the Viking Raiders. but that was perfectly executed and timed. It just looked crisp, looked like they had it very well put together, looked like they knew how to time it exactly at the right moment. And you had Stu walking on everybody's shoulders. I think it was across all three of them before flipping over the turnbuckle right before or right after that, rather, onto all of them too. It just showed that he is a very diverse talent as well. Be worth keeping an eye on him and seeing how he develops with the Dark Order. As I said, hopefully they tweak the gimmick a little bit to match the talent that they put on and showed here in this match. But SCU did end up taking the victory ultimately with an SCU later for the finish, which is a sort of like Widow's Peak move that Scorpio Sky ends up spinning into Frankie Kazarian with a Shining Wizard sort of knee. So that was a very interesting finishing move. Again, as I said last week on the podcast, a very nice theme so far is the tag team finishing moves. I think it's something that's been a part of tag team wrestling since, its inception, really. And having the finishers like, they have showcased throughout all of the different tag teams in AEW, the Gin and Juice by Private Party, the Meltzer Driver, the SCU later now as they're introducing it. Just so many different finishing moves, so many different tag team innovation offense where it's just something completely different that you've never seen before on a consistent basis. It's just a very deep talent pool for the tag team division in AEW, and they continue to make that a well-known presence and well-known fact with their television products so far. So a continuing theme and a very interesting and entertaining one to watch at that. Moving right along, however, we did have Kenny Omega versus Joey Janela once again, after they did have their match. A nice little video package showing that dark match, which was known as an unsanctioned dark match on AEW Dark there, so it won't count towards the records and all that, as I said before. But, a good video package showcasing that and letting people know, in case they haven't caught it on YouTube, what happened and kind of the history that they have with one another, and showing that they will probably put on one hell of a show after the spots that were shown in that. And then they also did showcase the fact that Kenny Omega won a title over in AAA, so they showcased that off and showed him getting the pinfall after a one-winged angel over there, so showing off that fact, and maybe we'll see that get involved with his matchup at Full Gear. We'll have to see if he does put that on the line against Jon Moxley. That could definitely be an interesting stipulation to add to that a little bit. But we'll kind of see if that develops later on. But as for this match, some nice back and forth wrestling action to start it off. Lots of reversals, quick holds, quick reversals, back and forth action. Just, really quick pace, nonstop. Kenny's chops continue to be some of the crispest and fiercest in the industry. I'm sure Janela probably went home with quite a red chest after the noise that it made reverberating throughout the arena here in Pittsburgh. But Janela really is a great all-around wrestler. He deserves a lot of credit for the fact that he is a talent that probably would get undervalued elsewhere. It probably would be stuck as Shorty G over in WWE, being only about 5'8". But instead he gets to showcase his skills, really let loose and be what he is. He's kind of got an ECW original sort of style, like maybe some sort of mix of Al Snow and Mikey Whipwreck or something along those lines. Maybe even a little Tommy Dreamer and Rhino mixed in there. Definitely a unique and interesting talent that'll certainly be a building block for AEW in the future, and love his hardcore style and his kind of never say die attitude. It definitely is a organic character who just really works. And, you know, if you watch any of the Being the Elite, you know, you saw him in the spot there. That was very entertaining, and he just has kind of a natural charisma that really shows off. And this matchup was a showcase of that, putting on a great contest with Kenny Omega, who really doesn't have a bad match in him. I don't quite understand how people are saying that he hasn't had a good AEW career so far. Sure, he hasn't picked up as many victories as many might have expected, but I think the overall match quality has still been just as consistent as Kenny Omega has ever been. And it's just a matter of taste, I guess, if you think that him not picking up the victory is something that maybe deteriorates it in people's minds, or I don't know what the case is there, but I think that his AEW career has been quite well done so far and continues to be a shining bright star for this young company, and will continue to be that. And he did end up taking the victory with a one-winged angel, very similar to the clip from him getting the title in AAA. Just a beautiful finisher, a really nice, crisp way to end a matchup, and just really hits beautifully, goes right into the pin, and always a nice way to end with a finisher that has a pinning combination that just seals the deal and looks like a end of the match kind of move. But next up we had another member of the Elite, of course, you know, the golden child, the bringer of AEW, Cody Rhodes. You know, he goes by now the shortened version Cody, dropping the Rhodes name, you know, saying recently that he kind of want to step away from that shadow. But regardless of that, he did end up having a sort of announcement. He had kind of led into that on Twitter with an announcement earlier in the day. But he ended up having the Inner Circle interrupting with some sort of air horns, and kind of a perfect annoying heel heat, but definitely very annoying for the audience and the television product as well, I'm sure. Probably irritating to a lot of people, but definitely did its job in terms of making them come off as kind of jackasses. So very smart, but also very annoying, as it probably was intended to be. But Cody mentioning the other company got a great pop, as he basically said that he could come out there and just attack Jericho if he wanted to, and they could just have a fight right then and there. Huge crowd support for Cody going after them, and you know, just Jericho playing the heel so perfectly, telling the Pittsburgh crowd to shut up, and saying that Cody's a coward, a whiny little millennial bitch, actually got him to kind of throw his jacket off and you know, come after them. But Jericho was basically saying the numbers advantage is there. Jake Hager wasn't there because he was getting ready for an MMA bout, which is a great little call out that Excalibur made sure to mention. Always a great, you know, kind of plugger on commentary. Does a great job of kind of righting the ship and keeping everything flowing nicely in the booth. So definitely think this is a case where the three-man booth really does work and is really shining as probably one of the better ones in wrestling, especially after the switch over on Raw, where I think the kind of announced team has gone down a little bit in quality. Especially, you know, after Renee Young left, where people thought that that was going to be a bad thing, but or a good thing, rather. I think that it's kind of suffered a little bit, and, you know, of course, Michael Cole moving back to SmackDown, and Corey Graves leaving to be on just SmackDown exclusively now. I think that it definitely speaks to the fact that AEW has a better quality booth all around than Raw, and, you know, maybe SmackDown as well. It's kind of open for debate there, but I really do enjoy the commentary back and forth between Tony, Jim, and Excalibur. So hopefully it definitely is a long-standing team that will continue to be the voices of AEW television, because they have a great chemistry. But back to the numbers advantage that Jericho was mentioning. We did end up getting Dustin Rhodes coming out, which got a good little pop from the audience and got them up and getting into the segment even more. And then MJF got a nice little ovation, but nothing everything kind of paled in comparison to Diamond Dallas Page coming out to an absolutely huge ovation. Very interesting to see him kind of come out in a different capacity. We saw him once before at a pay-per-view event for AEW, but having him come to Cody's defense was definitely an interesting call out to the fact that it's kind of well known that he is a member of the behind-the-scenes team for AEW. So having him come out and kind of use his name and use his kind of, presence to launch off this segment just that much more was a smart play and was very well done and definitely got the crowd going, 1 decibel higher, if you will. And a large part of that, too, is, of course, Jericho's promo work. You had a great little who wears a scarf line coming out from Jericho, of course, calling back to the fact that Vince absolutely hated his scarf in WWE. It was something that was a sticking point, and when he wore it, apparently it was a huge point of contention and ended up being a signature for a while, but very good call out and always a great promo man and showcasing it here once again. And once the kind of ragtag group that Cody put together of those 4 ended up coming after the Inner Circle, they just kind of went to leave, it looked like, but they kind of locked themselves inside of this glass door, or behind this glass door that was in the VIP box they were in. But then Cody decided to go full badass mode and use MJF's scarf. He borrowed it, asked for it like a gentleman, I guess you would say, and broke the glass to the locked glass door and went right after Jericho. And it was a great street fight feel. The crowd was really pumped and into it, and you ended up having them go to the back, Cody dumping trash onto Jericho, hitting him with the trash can, and just all sorts of, all-out brawl feels, with the stable kind of interacting with Cody's group, and kind of all hell breaking loose there. So police and security were escorting Cody's crew out, I guess for beating on the Inner Circle, because they did have tickets for the VIP booth or whatever it was that they were in. So an interesting little choice that they decided to do a spot with them being ticket holders, and kind of almost similar to the Shane McMahon shenanigans that they had recently with him, saying that, you can't go after a referee, Kevin Owens, and all that sort of stuff. So kind of called that to mind, but I definitely think it had a good feel for the overall storyline between Jericho and Cody leading into their match at Full Gear. So keeps everything going, keeps everything kind of pumping, keeps that feud fueled and ready to go, and keeps that intensifying as they lead into that pay-per-view coming up really soon, as a matter of fact. But right after this matchup, we led into another member of the Elite. A lot of them showcased here throughout the night. The Young Bucks versus the Best Friends. Chuck Taylor and Trent versus Nick and Matt Jackson. Entrances during the commercials for the Best Friends, which I thought was kind of a great idea, kind of leading in less commercial time, or less time without actual content for the commercials. And this was definitely heavy on the content once again. Great fast-paced action right away. Showcase of the Best Friends here for sure. Definitely a consistent theme that the Young Bucks are putting over other tag teams and making them look good, and this was another example of just that. They put out a very strong performance and made them look very good, and just have a great chemistry with almost any tag team that they go into the ring with. So I think that they're doing a great part of making tag team wrestling a big part of the show, and they're just a consistent tag team that knows exactly what they're doing, and they set a good example for the rest of the roster as a result of that. But this was a good overall showing out party sort of for the Best Friends, and you had Orange Cassidy kind of working as a manager here in some sort of kind of managerial capacity, kind of standing around the ring, And I think that actually might be his best fit going forward, kind of keeping him in smaller doses and having him be on the sidelines for the Best Friends or whatever other affiliation he adds later on down the line, but kind of being in that managerial side role, interacting a little bit as he did with the flip with the hands in the pockets once again, as he likes to do in this matchup, as the ref was distracted with the hug by I think it was Trent, or no, I think actually it was Chuck that was hugging the referee at the time as he did that maneuver to the Young Bucks. But a good little idea to move him to that role, and I think that'll be the best fit for him. Rather than having him as a full-time wrestler. Maybe that'll keep Jim Cornette and all the other people who are angry with Orange Cassidy a little happier as a result of that. But one spot in particular that was worth mentioning was we had a strong zero by the Best Friends that ended up leading to a swanton breaking it up. I think it was Matt who did the swanton to break it up. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Made me pop, jump out of my seat. Just a crazy maneuver, and once again speaks to the absolute insane bag of tricks sort of that the tag team division has in AEW, and the constant blow your mind, oh my god moments that happen. Joey Styles would probably be a good fourth man to some of these matches just to throw in a couple of his oh my gods at some of the moments that happen. But there was a super kick party that came out of nowhere, and the finish was also crazy. There was a 450 to moonsault combo that kind of wrapped it up nicely, and they did end up confirming at the end of the matchup that they accept the challenge from Santana and Ortiz, and it is confirmed for Full Gear, which that card is shaping up quite nicely leading into that, so we'll see if there are any more additions before then, but for now it's looking very nice so far. But next matchup was Britt Baker versus Jamie Hayter. This is in, of course, Britt's hometown of Pittsburgh. We had some Brittsburg chants breaking out during the contest. Kind of was expecting a squash going in, but Jamie Hayter is 24 years old, been in various independent women's promotion, former Red Pro British Women's Champion, been in Stardom, and even, interestingly enough, had one appearance for NXT UK. So she got some early offense going, some good heat as a result of that. She was playing the heel very well, kind of doing the cry face to the crowd and playing up to the fact that the hometown crowd did want to see Britt come out with the victory, but played up to the fact that she knew that very well and was ready to put up a fight here tonight and not let that happen. So good, simple heel work by the 24-year-old, and back and forth offense. You had a really good fan reaction to them trading forearms in the center of the ring, and some on-point super kicks by Britt that looked very vicious, very powerful, and definitely crisply on the jaw from the looks of it. Sold very well as a result also by Jamie Hayter in this, but they did succumb to the pressure of having the hometown hero come out victorious. The lockjaw submission is being sold once again as unbeatable. A brilliant little finisher, calling out to the fact that she is indeed a dentist. They'll let you know on the commentary as well. It'll definitely be mentioned at least 3 times. I think that's the rule. But definitely a good part of her character and worth mentioning. Just funny that they do make sure to let everybody know on a pretty consistent basis. So maybe a little on the head with that, but good call out to the fact that she is a real life dentist, and maybe this is kind of Glenn Jacobs reincarnated and done right, Dr. Yankum or whatever that character was back then, Isaac Yankum I think it was. But a nice little pop for Britt winning regardless of my little banter there. The match went a little long, but did a good job of trying to make Jamie look competitive and showing her out, and kind of making up for the fact that we kind of knew what the finish was going to be, and Britt was going to probably take it home, and she did ultimately do that, but in a way that was very entertaining to watch, although maybe just hanging a little bit and having a little bit too much offense from her, kind of maybe a little bit too much of a give from Britt in this situation. We did then have a little graphic just reminding us that the Lucha Bros versus SCU will be for the tag titles. So that's the finals of the tag tournament. Already an interesting feud brewing between them. Some brilliant long-term storytelling leading into this. So that'll definitely be a great contest when that does come to fruition. But right after that, it flashed to an interview with Jamie Hayter, who was getting ready to kind of play up to the heel once again. And she was ended up getting stopped by Brandy attacking her and doing this weird sort of aggressive finger wagging at the reporter as if she was angry with her, and this fell very flat, but I guess we'll see where this goes. Maybe Brandy's kind of going on some sort of rampage of the women's division and attacking everybody and doing some sort of Dolph Ziggler, it should have been me with Riho or something. We'll have to see if this develops into something interesting or if it continues to fall flat, but this was definitely one of the misses of the night, and I think an overall low note in general from the matchup with Britt Baker. I think it left a little to be desired with Jamie Hayter, although, as I said, it showed her well. It just kind of was not as good a contest as they probably could have had together, and we'll probably see better from them in the future, rather if they're together or separate. But just kind of nitpicking on an otherwise great show, including this, it would still be considered a very good part of the show all in all. But the overall top performance of the night would come right after this matchup, which was Pac versus Jon Moxley. Right away, we're shouting out that Jon Moxley's entrance is very simple, very clean. The entrance music is not too complicated, but it's just overall pretty brilliant and very well done with the production value of the prison scene that leads him in, and just a nice little entrance, a nice little way to bring in his character here in AEW. And shout out to Justin Roberts too for his vocals on his intro. The John probably went on for what seemed like a solid 3 or 4 hours. So I think an entire episode of Raw aired, and I think they did get to Friday Night SmackDown and even taped 205 Live in the time that it took John to come out of Justin Roberts' mouth. So I hope he got some oxygen after that, because he probably was oxygen deprived. But Pac ended up blind signing John right away, right after Justin Roberts finally decided to come up for air. But he blindsided John with a chair and started choking him out with his jacket, which looked very nice and brutal and very bastard-like, I guess you could say. Looked as if the match might not even happen, but Moxley, being ever the badass, decided to push the refs to the side as he kind of stumbled around, selling the fact, he just got thrown into the steel barricades and hit with a chair, choked with a jacket, and so Pac immediately decided to try to put him away with the Black Arrow, but he rolled out and got hit with this beautiful moonsault over the top ropes by Pac. Landed on his feet even, just shows how athletic Pac really is. The man gravity forgot, so to speak. So having him showcase that here against Moxley, and he also showed the fact that he's just as comfortable in an all-out brawl as he is high-flying, so that's worth mentioning here as well. I guess you could say that to some extent with Moxley, even though he's not going to do nearly the things in the air that Pac will do. He's definitely a all-around performer and just as comfortable in a brawl and a street fight kind of environment as he is anywhere else. So definitely a good showing out for both of these men and a great way to cap off this night. Mox kind of furthered the Stone Cold confirmation in my mind that he's trying to be this generation or AEW Stone Cold by stomping a mud hole out into Pac at one point. Moxley was begging for kicks, begging for the violence, so to speak, I guess you could say, with Pac. Great character work there. A nice bulldog onto the ring apron that spiked spiked his head down, made that look very good. Pac is great at selling. A huge lariat from Moxley sold amazingly. A nice black hole from John. Just some very innovative offense and showcasing kind of a different style that we haven't seen from Moxley or from Pac so far in their AEW careers. So, 450 splash off the apron from Pac that showcased his athleticism once again. A huge avalanche Falcon Arrow earlier in the match. Cloverleaf even came out from Moxley's repertoire. So just a little bit of everything that you could really ask for in a wrestling match here. Just fast-paced action. Things got a little more intense as they started announcing the 5 minutes remaining. So that kind of picked up the intensity a little bit as well. You could kind of see almost the panic that brought between them. Pac ended up missing a black arrow shortly after that with 1 minute remaining. Moxley tried to crawl for the pin, but he kicked out right at the last split second, and it ended up ending in a draw at the 20-minute time limit. But Moxley decided he was going to just go ahead and attack the ref and ended it by basically saying, "Time limit's my ass," and ended the night with him kind of repeating that phrase to himself over and over again, and clearly still wanting a piece of Pac and wanting to finish what they started, and a little pissed off at the fact that he had a draw. The crowd kind of reacted to it a little negatively at first, but I think they kind of came to terms with it, and I think really the time limits do tell a great story when done right, and this is the second time a draw has really gotten both men over in the situation, as evidenced with the earlier mentioned Cody and Darby Allin match back at Fyter Fest. So I think this was another example of how the time limits can really be used well, and it did cap off the night with a very epic big fight feel, and I think it leaves it open for hopefully another matchup down the line, probably at a pay-per-view, no doubt. Maybe getting another build-up similarly to the way the John Moxley-Kenny Omega feud is now, with a sort of slow burn and make us want it kind of thing going on. But all in all, another great episode of AEW Dynamite, another wonderful Wednesday night of wrestling, and hopefully for all of you listening, another great episode of AEW Dynamite Aftershock. Once again, I've been your host, Zach Perez. At Spots High on Twitter is where you can find me. You can read my articles there. I'll link you over to those. You can read my opinions live as I watch wrestling happen. Any little project that I have coming forward, all the links to the other episodes of AEW Dynamite Aftershock that have preceded this, all of that can be found at Spots High on Twitter. Is the central home for all of my goods, so to speak, that you can find. So my writing, my voice, everything is kind of all live right there. So hopefully you reach out and find me. Hopefully you enjoyed this edition of AEW Dynamite Aftershock. But until next time, goodbye and good night.
Goodbye and good night. Goodbye and good night. Goodbye and good night. Goodbye and good night.